Welcome to the 11th Hour. I'm Joe,
I'm Gabe.
and the reason we made this podcast is because we're both really interested in a wide variety of esoteric topics, and we've definitely noticed that there's a lot more people interested in a lot of these concepts because they've been experiencing a lot of unusual synchronicities or just a lot of just unusual experiences within their own personal life. And we're hoping that this podcast can help people become more aware of some of these patterns that are going on in their everyday reality.
We wanted to, kind of first, separate ourselves from everything else that you might be seeing out there, you know, when it comes to like, basic astrology or, crystals or, you got the spirituality girl starter pack here. The difference between that and what we're trying to accomplish here is, just kind of get a rooted practical understanding and what people could be noticing here, what they're picking up on. We'll go into a few concepts that are pretty compelling, right? That you can actually perhaps verify, statistically or through other means, rather than just really abstract talk about spirituality or something like that. All right, so 28. That's the number of wealth, and what does that mean when something has a 28 associated with it? Well, that means the energy of 28 is imprinted upon it in some way. Now, that could be the day that a company was founded or the founder was born. And as you can see, 5 out of the 23 wealthiest people on the planet are born on a 28 day, or born on the 28th to be precise. And that would include Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Carlos Slim. So there's a statistically significant correlation between 28 energy, or more specifically being born on the 28th and amassing immense amounts of wealth. This is something you can go out and verify yourself. You see Henry Ford born on a 28 day, Steve Jobs born on a 28 day, Apple with the largest market cap founded on a 28 day. Uh, Something pretty relevant today, Elon Musk's child born on a 28 day. Perhaps that was something that was planned. I mean, we can only
Right.
speculate at this point.
So basically, one thing to also know about the 28 is, maybe there's some people watching here who are born on the 28th and they're like, why am I not a billionaire? And it doesn't always work as easily as you want it to, obviously. But, you definitely, if you have the opportunity to take a little bit more risk and be rewarded for it if you have that type of energy compared to a lot of other people. And 28 is specifically also one energy because 2 plus 8 is 10, which 1 plus 0 is 1, and it adds up to 1. And 1 is masculine energy, which means associated with a leader. Now, number 2 would be feminine energy. So if you're someone's born on the second, especially a woman, she can have more of a feminine attribute to her and a bit more diplomatic also. 3 is childlike energy. A lot of comedians can be overrepresented in this as well. Now, 4 is law and order, or like a harder worker. These are usually a bit more, you'll actually see people that are overrepresented within the law force. And the police officers as well. And Gary's actually done this quite often where he gets pulled over and he ends up getting away with the ticket because he figures out that they're either born on the 13th or something like that. And, he's able to kind of do some sort of a reading on them and it usually kind of blows their mind. So there is definitely something that you'll see. Me personally, I met these two people that were, they both had the same first name and then they were both in the military. And I just knew right away they had to be four life paths. And I ended up doing the reading right in front of them. And it turned out that they actually both were. So they actually previously tried to check to see if they were born on the same year or similar astrology or something like that, but none of that was there. But when it came to the numerology, that was actually very solid and it was, there. So very interesting when you start noticing these patterns. Five, now that's associated with travel, health, good looks. Now, quite often, I'll see like a clip from Gary where he says that people with that five energy, they're usually really just good looking, right? And sometimes I'll see some people in the comments that are haters and they'll say something like, well, I just looked at some of my friends on Facebook. They're born on the 5th. These people are unattractive, right? And they're just kind of like dissing him. And I get it. Like when you're when you don't have as much data to work with, you can look at some of this and then say there's not really anything going on here. But it's not always about them being really good looking, because obviously genetics can play a role. If your parents are just really unattractive, then you're just going to be unattractive. Even if you're a five, perhaps you'll be a little bit more attractive than them. But something that you might have is that you do definitely want to travel more. You're more oriented towards health, things like that. Those attributes can still show up. Now, six, this is someone that's more home and family oriented. These are usually people that are a lot more wholesome as well. Seven, this kind of goes back to what I was saying about the five as well. People with seven energy, they're usually more introspective, introverted. They can tend to be more intelligent as well. But that doesn't mean that, for instance, an example that I can provide here is if there's two parents, they both have 85 IQ and they have a kid that's born on the seventh, this person's not going to be a genius, right? Maybe they'll have like a 95 IQ or something like that. But that attribute of them being more introspective, maybe more wanting to learn more, right? Those types of things can certainly pop up within them. So obviously, we do live in a material world, and genetics can play a huge role when it comes to this type of stuff. And yeah, moving forward to the eight. Now, eight is the number of money. As we were saying earlier, 28 is the number of wealth. But with people that have that eight energy, they're more money oriented. And with nine, now this is one of those things that there's a bit of confusion with a lot of the old school numerologists, because a lot of the old school numerologists will say that nines are the humanitarians. And I remember when I was first looking into this stuff, I was looking at some of the people that were nines, and it just didn't really seem like that fit that well. But Gary's explanation was that they're adaptable people and they can really adapt to their environment. And another thing is, quite a bit of people would say that nines are old souls, and I really did not see that much either. And Gary actually says that they're not old souls. And now, to actually go into the actual old souls, these are the master numbers. These you can really interpret this in many different ways depending on what your personal belief is, right? If you're someone that believes in reincarnation, then old soul means that this is someone that has lived longer lives, and because of that, they have more of a shared experience. If you're someone that's not into reincarnation, or if that's not a part of your belief structure, you could perhaps argue that these are people that simply were just born with a specific type of gift of intuition, and there's different hierarchy to these numbers, right? And basically, the master numbers are the top of the hierarchy. And the 11s, these are more of the charismatic people. The 22s, these are the master builders and the master destroyers. And we've definitely seen a lot of interesting stuff with 22 energy. Just you'll see people that are in a 22 personal year, and we'll get into that later, where they have a lot of intense things going on in their life. And we can share a story that we have personally about that later as well. Now, people with the 33 energy, these are basically the highest of the master numbers. They're the master teachers. And as we mentioned, 28 is associated with wealth. Now, quite often people will say that 13 is the unluckiest number, but in many ways that might just be a psyop, because quite often a lot of people with that 13 energy, they can really be considered a sub-master number in many ways, and they've got certain attributes that are, certainly not unlucky. But I would argue that the unluckiest would be 19, actually, and you'll see this quite often with people that are either born on the 19th or have some 19 energy somewhere in there, or if they're going through a 19 personal year, they might have certain things with health going on. They might just have some problems with health, and that could be mental or that could be physical. But I have also heard, now if you're someone that's born on the 19th and you don't really have any problems right now, I have also heard Gary mention that quite often that there's people that are born on the 19th, and then when they're a kid, they have some severe illness, and then it goes away, and then they never get any problems again. So you might be one of those cases, so you don't have to worry about that too much. Now, to go into 13 and 31, so the Matrix likes to play with mirrors. And basically, so when things are inverted, it can still have similar attributes of that energy. And 13 can be described as the number of the Matrix. And in fact, the movie The Matrix actually came out on a 13 day. And you'll see quite a bit of just associations with the number 13 in many things, from different religious systems and different elite organizations. There's the 12 tribes of Israel, and then one Israel, 12 zodiacs, one sun, things of that sort. And there's also considered to be like the 13 bloodlines of the Illuminati. So you'll definitely see that association with the number 13 that shows up quite often within a lot of elite circles. And it's not necessarily a bad luck type of thing, as a lot of people have been led to believe, but there's certainly something going on there when it comes to an imprint.
The viewer might be asking, what does that mean? Numbers mean stuff other than one equals something other than one? What are they talking about? I think the best way to understand this is, um, you know, obviously there's the credibility of the fact that many ancient religions, occult practices, societies, and cultures have associated meaning to numbers for ages, right? And what what we've provided here so far is kind of just like a perhaps a legend to a map, right? I mean, we've given you the meaning of each number, what it's associated with, and I would challenge people to go out there and to just start noticing these associations, right? You could say, oh, that's crazy. Number two is associated with feminine energy or diplomacy. We'll go out there and start making these associations, see if there's something to this, right?
Don't think we mentioned this, but me and Gabe are both 11s. And when I first kind of heard about some of this numerology stuff earlier on, maybe I first heard about it a while back in like 2017, but I just kind of didn't think much of it until maybe around 2022, 2023, right? And around when I first saw it, maybe 2017, 2018, I was looking at it and it said that I was an 11, a master number, and it said something about like a spiritual leader or this or that. And I just kind of dismissed that because it felt like it was just trying to tell me something that I was like, oh, I was special and I was this. And it just seemed like some sort of generic astrology reading type of thing where it
New
was just like a
age.
website trying to, yeah, exactly. So I was just kind of like, this is just cheesy. I don't really want to look into it. But when I really started seeing the real patterns, and it was like much later, is I started noticing obviously like stuff with the number 28, but then I started noticing the people around me, like family and friends, of like, why do I have all these friends that have like some 11 energy here or quite a bit of sevens here and there as well? And then Gary will say that 11 and 7 get along well, and you had that with his store 7-11, right? So I definitely started noticing that, and then I started noticing that people that are 5 life paths, they seem to operate in a very consistent way across the board, or people that are 4 seem to do this. And once you start seeing these patterns consistently, it's hard to stop seeing it. And then it becomes obvious it's not just a coincidence, because I can totally understand, some of the people watching this, they're like, well, maybe that's just a coincidence. And but after you start really noticing it with your friends and family, obviously there's going to be outliers in certain cases, right? Certain people just don't fit into it because of childhood trauma or things of that sort, right? And then they kind of get outside of their energy because of that. But in general, a lot of people quite often do fit in to that energy on some level, and you notice these clear patterns, and you notice who they're getting along with and things of that sort. And over time, it just becomes obvious that there is uh, something clearly going on here.
Yeah, and I think it's important to distinguish between something like this and fortune telling or prophecy. It's when you say something has the imprint of whatever numerological energy from this or that number, you're not going to be able to make precise predictions. What are the lottery numbers or something like that. But it's kind of like saying this thing has these properties, so you would expect it to behave in this way, and you'd be able to make predictions about something based on those properties, and not really anything on top of that. It's not, we're not talking about fortune telling or something like that.
Right.
How do you add up the numbers? Like how do you get the numerological imprint of a certain date?
Yeah, so there's quite a bit of people that will end up adding the numbers up wrong, and this is really the best way to do it. And you have to basically just add it up across the board, right? So see how that dates right there is 5/5/2025. So you just add 5 plus 5 plus 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5. That adds up to 19. Then you add 1 plus 9, that's 10. 1 plus 0, that's 1, right? But with the second part, now with master numbers, it's actually a little bit different. You have to hold the number there. So if it's the 11th or if it's the 22nd, you actually just hold, you don't reduce the 11 to a 2. So you'd make it 5 plus 11 plus 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5. That adds up to 25, and that's 2 plus 5 is 7. So that would be a 7-day. So there's also an interesting part with how you can determine the hidden master numbers. And with this, for instance, the 5/19/2025, you can add it up normally, which would be 5 plus 1 plus 9 plus 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5. That equals 24. But if you don't reduce it and you just add 5 plus 19 plus 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5, that actually equals 33. And meaning that date actually does have a little bit of 33 energy to it. For the most part, it is just a 6-day, but it has a little bit of 33 energy to it, and that day would be considered a hidden 33. Now, there's quite a bit of calculators online, and most of them are doing it incorrectly, and they end up not finding the life path properly. And sometimes they'll refer to like a 4 life path as a 22, or they'll refer to a number that's actually a 22 as a force, things of that sort. But I would strongly recommend this website right here, gg33.app. That was created by one of the members of gg33, and they ended up just making it correct. Cool. So this person here was born 9/14/1955. And here's how you find the personal year. A lot of people are actually doing this incorrectly. They assume that the personal year starts on January, but it actually starts on the moment of your birthday, actually. So, meaning you need to look at the universal year of last year, since this person's birthday has not, started yet this year. It's in September. So you need to look at the universal year of last year, meaning 2024. You add up 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 4, and that's 8. So you add up the 9/14, so 9 plus 1 plus 4 plus 8 equals 22. So what that basically means is this person is in a 22-year cycle, and they'll go into 23 on their birthday, which would be a 5 cycle. But right now, this person's actually in a master number cycle at this moment, and 22 is considered the master builder or the master destroyer. So that this is certainly intense energy that they have right now. And interestingly enough, this birthday is actually the current Pope, Pope Leo the 14th. And interestingly enough, he's born on the 14th, and he's Pope Leo the 14th.
So lucky numbers.
All right. So basically, what you do is you take the first digit and the last digit, and then you put them together. So I use 11 as an example here because some people might think that it's the first two numbers of the month or whatever, but no, you actually just take the 1 from the 11, and then you take the 8 at the end, and this person's lucky number would be 18. And for the next one, this would be October 11th, 1999. The lucky number there would be 19, but Gary has specifically said that if someone has 19 as the lucky number, it's really better to avoid that. And what they could personally do is just focus on the day that they're born instead. So in this case, they're born on the 11th. So just ignore that 19, focus on using 11 as your lucky number if you happen to have this birthday.
So this would be, just to rouse the appetite here a bit for numerology. These are some historical events that have numerological significance. Everybody kind of has an understanding that the people in charge or the people who orchestrate events or, the various countries that are involved in some kind of geopolitical conflict, there are people who decide at the end of the day when the event is going to occur, like a treaty. And the Allied powers during World War I, they signed a ceasefire agreement at a very particular time and date. And that time was 11 a.m. on November, which is the 11th month, on the 11th of 1918. And I think we should probably get into a little bit of what that kind of a numerological imprint would have on that kind of a day. And as far as I understand, the association with 11 is that of heightened emotion, right? So typically right. That's not something you'd want to end a war on. Perhaps they were anticipating a second conflict. But that's just some speculation we can do here. We can perhaps go into more depth in a later video. Another date would be the assassination of JFK on November 22nd, again, that 11, and then we got the 22 there, two master numbers, 1963 at 11:55 a.m. That's a lot of repeating numbers there and a lot of master number energy. And of course, we have September 11th, 2001. The flight was also 11, and New York is the 11th state, which is quite an interesting thing if it's a coincidence.
Right.
People involved in orchestrating various events, are they doing this purposefully, or is this pure coincidence? You got the Spanish influenza that happened in 1919. Again, that number that's associated with bad health, right? And of course, we have COVID-19. That's a pretty obvious one there. And we have the foundation of Tel Aviv on April 11th, 1909. And a few of these events on here, you can probably attribute them to various occult influences, from Freemasonry to the Kabbalah, right? These are associations that you could make. The people that were deciding, let's have this happen on this day. And they were certainly aware of the numerological significance of these numbers.
Yeah, an interesting anecdote that I have about April 11th is when I was first getting into numerology, maybe this was 2023, I think. I kept seeing April 11th just show up everywhere, and kept seeing that certain people were born this way, and I just kept seeing that certain celebrities were wanting to have like an event on that day, and for some reason, I just kept seeing it pop up constantly. And I noticed actually on that year, I think it was 2023, April 11th was actually a 22 day. So it had like heightened master number energy. And I just kept seeing it everywhere. I kind of mentioned to a family member, man, something crazy is going to happen in April 11th. And then, eventually, they might have kind of forgotten about it. And then eventually, when April 11th came, they texted me and they were like, "Wow, you were right. My car broke down on this day." And it was a 22 day, so Master Builder, Master Destroyer. So you'll definitely see certain things like that where things like that can happen on a 22 day. So
Yeah, so a pretty major organization we wanted to go in here. We already mentioned Freemasonry, we mentioned Kabbalah. That you can go, there's probably a very long list of organizations and cultures, religions, and cults that place, meaning and significance on numbers and practice numerology by name. But a pretty major organization here that we wanted to go into a little bit of depth on would be the Vatican. So,
So one thing that's interesting to note is V is actually the 22nd letter in the alphabet, and that can certainly play a role with the Vatican as well. And with one of the major dates that I really want to start off with is really 4/28, 1738. And this was actually a 33 day, and it's also obviously that 28. And this was when Freemasonry was officially banned by the Vatican for pretty much all Catholics, and it was it was intentionally a 33 day, possibly it was intentionally a 33 day, and it was on the 28th. So interesting to see that imprint, because it is there's always been that kind of dispute between really Christianity and Freemasonry, feeling like they were subverting society and things of that sort. Now, when you go ahead and look at the Vatican contact address, you can Google this right now, Vatican contact address. It literally says Vatican Relays Rome, Borgio Angelico 22, Rome, Italy. As I mentioned, the V is the 22, so even within that, you kind of see that 22 popping up there. Now, Pope Clement, the seventh, he, when I looked through it, he's really the only 33 life path that I could find. Now, obviously, some of the earlier popes, their birthdays aren't really known. So, obviously there could be other 33s out there, but he's the only known 33 that I could find, at least. Maybe you guys can find some other ones that I missed. And interestingly enough, he's actually considered the most unfortunate of the popes by historians. And part of the reason, it's not because he was a bad pope, it's because he was known for being incredibly intelligent. He was known for being, he had a reputation as a great statesman. And the problem was he was faced with a lot of complex political situations and challenges. And we even had the Protestant Reformation going on at the time. And we just a lot of conflicts going on. And regardless of who is Pope there, they really wouldn't have been able to do much with that. So he was clearly someone with a lot of influence and power, but he wasn't really able to use it as much as he could have in other circumstances. Now, to go into Pope Pius the Ninth, he is the longest verifiable pope. Now, officially, the first pope, Peter, is considered the longest pope, but in terms of the most current verifiable one, it's Pope Pius. Now, you see that 28 there. 28 is associated with wealth, and it can certainly help you out in other ways in terms of being, considered the longest pope as well. Now, Pope John Paul II, this is actually a pope that is really beloved by a lot of Gen Xers because he's one of those popes that a lot of people have fond memories of. And he's the second longest verifiable pope. And he was an 8 life path. And eight's definitely, associated, as I mentioned, is associated with money, but it's also associated with power. And the papacy actually started on a 33 days. So that influence of the 33 also played a role within this pope. And he certainly was considered, one of the most beloved modern day popes. Now, the one thing that I definitely noticed, and this was really surprising to me when I started looking into some of the popes that were 22 life paths, is there seems to be some weird, perhaps coincidence, perhaps not, going on where you see a lot of these popes that are 22 life paths or with 22 energy, they end up dying really early on. So maybe these guys they're getting killed off, unfortunately. But Pope Leo the 11th, so you kind of have that 11 there as well. He was a 22 life path. He had a very short papacy. He died within a 19 personal year, and he actually died 27 days into his papacy. Now, you got Pope Alexander the 8th, and he was born April 22, and yeah, he had a short papacy as well, under 22 years. Now, the most interesting and unusual of the 22s, and this is actually really it's our most recent master number pope, actually. And he was a 22 life path. He died 33 days into his papacy, so you have that 33 within there as well. And he actually didn't want to be pope at all. And after he was made pope, he actually told the cardinals, "May God forgive you for what you have done." And then, 33 days later, he ended up dying. So, definitely one of the shortest papacies. And there's a lot of conspiracies around there about how maybe he might have been killed off. And, my personal opinion about what might be going on here is people with that 22 energy, they definitely are not the type to want to just go with the flow. They want to make changes. It's the master builder, master destroyer. And someone with that type of attitude might have just been killed off by some of the other elites there because they didn't want him to make some of these changes. So yeah. And another person that's also associated with the Vatican, not necessarily a pope, is Leonardo da Vinci, and he's a 22 life path, and certainly was a genius and one of even to this day he's still considered one of the greatest geniuses of all time. He was an engineer, he was an artist, sculptor, had a wide variety of talents. So as I mentioned, the current pope, Pope Leo XIV, he became pope in a 22 personal year. What I didn't mention is that it was also a 22 day. Now he was actually supposed to, they were actually the Cardinals were actually supposed to pick the Pope on May 7th, but I guess they were like, it's just a lame day for some reason, and that's actually Gabe's birthday. But they decided for whatever reason to change that to the next day, even though they were supposed to pick him on May 7th. They changed it over to May 8th, and May 8th is actually a 22 day, so that we have Pope Leo XIV becoming pope in a 22 personal year on a 22 day. And as I already mentioned, he was born on the 14th, and he's Pope Leo the 14th. So there's all this like kind of association and synchronicities going on here, and much of it might be intentional. Now let's go into these priests who are really just social media phenomenons, and they have a wide appeal. So Father Mike Schmitz. So this video, we're not really going to touch upon astrology as much, but I kind of have to with Mike Schmitz because he's 50 years old and he still just looks really young. And he has a very interesting combination of energies. So people that are 11 life paths can age really well. People with that 5 energy have good looks and good health generally. And he's also born in a tiger year, and people with that tiger energy also age really well. So he has a very interesting trifecta of energy right there that can certainly help him age well, and he certainly has. And he actually had, so as I mentioned, he's an 11 life path, and 11 can be associated with charisma. And he's has one of the biggest podcasts, where the Christian podcast, where it was Bible in a day. And he's also, he's beloved by a lot of Catholic women for some reason as well. And yeah, so moving forward to Father David Michael Moses, he's actually a millennial and he's born the same year as me. And he was able to really take advantage of the Instagram algorithm in a way that maybe Father Mike Schmitz doesn't understand as well. So he was able to get 1 million subscribers or followers right now on Instagram. So he's literally the most followed priest right now. And the person right next to him, that is Jonathan Rumi, and you might recognize him from a widely popular show called The Chosen, and it's a Christian show, and he plays Jesus in that show, and he's also an 11 life path. So you'll see quite a bit of 11s showing up in different ways, associated with charisma and things of that sort. And yeah, so this is a really interesting one because quite often I'll run into people that are very hesitant about numerology for different reasons, right? But especially if someone is devoutly Christian and they feel like numerology is something that's evil or it's not something that they should look into. I ended up finding this priest who, Father Dan Rehill, not only is he a priest, he's actually an exorcist, and he's born on a pure 33 day, and he's a 33 life path priest. And when I say 33 life path, it's not something that he identifies with or something like that. It's not like a Freemasonic thing. It's you're just adding up his birthday and it adds up to 33, right? He might not even know that he's a 33, but he certainly has noticed a lot of these unusual patterns, and yeah, would definitely like to see the clip.
This is that priest on Sean Ryan's podcast here, going into a little bit of his experience with numerology and sort of the perspective of numerology from a very holy man.
What do you think about reoccurring numbers like 444?
Happens to me all the time.
What is that?
I don't know for sure, but for me, when I see a triple, it's always Trinity. So I just do a glory be every time I see the 3 numbers. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Just give God glory. So I would get to the point where, at 5:55, I'm like, okay, I'm off the hook now for like 12 hours because there's no 666 on our clocks, clearly. So, and then I'd start seeing it on the microwave, where I'd look over at the microwave's going, and I look over, it's like, 222 as it's counting down. I'm like, so this is going to happen. This is going to happen all through the day, I guess. License plates. I'm looking, I see it all the time. And for me, it's just give God glory. Be aware of his presence.
Interesting. Yeah, this happens. This is a big part of my story, too.
Okay.
444. And I see it all the time now. And now I see all these reoccurring numbers all the time. And I looked it up, and it said that, this is really interesting, Father, because I had this profound experience, came home, started making phone calls. One of them was to this guy, Eddie Penny, who's also been there for me when I need spiritual advice. And I had a chat with him at night and he was talking about guardian. He was basically saying, he said, now that you've chosen a side, things are going to start happening. And not necessarily good things. And he said that you'll be attacked. And the very next morning, I had a conversation with a gentleman that works for me. His name's Adam. Very devout Catholic. Had the exact same conversation again. And when I looked at it just, all these things happened. That conversation with Adam happened at noon. I went home for lunch. I looked at my clock on the way back to the studio. It said 4:44. I looked at the odometer. You know, you have this many. You have 444 miles left until empty. And this happened 4 hours and 44 minutes after my conversation with Adam. And so I was like, what's going on? Got here to the studio, Googled it. It said, we want you to know that your guardian angels, 444 means somebody wants you to know your guardian angels are watching over you at this specific time. And those two conversations prior to that were about guardian angels. And I was like, whoa.
Well, all pistons should be firing because today is the feast of the guardian angels.
Say again?
Today, October 2nd, in the church is the feast day of the guardian angels. Today, the church honors the guardian angels, October 2nd.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's,
Well, the chances are 1 out of 365.
wow. Wow. You just, man, that's, I know there are no coincidences.
No. So I don't know if you ever heard this, but like Tim Tebow, remember when he was playing in college, he put the 316 under his eyes for John 3:16, and of course the NCAA said you can't do that. No religious monikers on your person, and he was, okay, I'll be obedient to the league, and then 3 years later to the day, he was playing, I think, a playoff game for Denver. Was he even Denver?
I don't know.
I don't remember. But anyway, his publicist comes up to him at the end of the game. And it's on, he has a video of it. It's amazing. He's like, do you know what today is? He's like, whatever the date is. He's like, no, but it's more than that. This is the 3-year anniversary of when you put John 3:16 on your eyes. And let me just tell you what happened. And there were like a dozen stats on that game. Every one of them was 3:16.
Wow.
Like he had 31.6 yards in passing. He had, it was all over the game, everywhere, rushing. And like, this is involving two major teams that you can't orchestrate this.
Yeah.
And that's how God just gives you a wink, like, I'm in control here. I know what's going on. And I'm thankful you did that for me. And that day, it was the most Googled thing I think for the week was John 3:16 on the 3-year anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah.
I always feel like that's a sign that God's just saying, hey, I've got you.
Yeah.
Cool. So a couple things to note here is he mentioned Tim Tebow, and Tim Tebow is actually an 11 life path. And so it's interesting that he mentioned someone else that's a master number. And Tim Tebow is even born on the 14th, and we'll go into that number later on in this podcast. But a couple things to note. He mentions how he sees 444 a lot. He's born on the 4th, so that could certainly play a role. But everything really is contextual. If you're someone that's seeing 444, it doesn't necessarily mean it has anything to do with your guardian angels. It could mean something else based on what your personal experience is. Because he is an exorcist, he's literally priest, and he's really gone through so many interesting experiences, having to battle demons and things of that sort. He's going to have a unique experience that is, unique to him. So for someone else, 444, 4 is really associated with hard work and things of that sort. It might mean something like you need to work harder. It might mean something like you're going to have trouble with the law or whatever it is. And if you start seeing some of these patterns consistently based on your personal experiences, you can start noticing exactly what it is that's going on in your life and what that means to you. And so because he is someone that's actually gone out into the spiritual world and experienced some of these things, there's obviously going to be people that are just kind of lay people within the church who haven't experienced any of these things, and they might look at some of these numbers things as just kind of unusual and odd, but because he's clearly gone out into the real world and even exercised people, he's noticed a lot of these patterns, and it's hard to completely ignore it at that point.
Yeah, and I think that there was the intersection of a few things there, other than numerology. There's certainly, various synchronicities and the elements of someone's faith, right? So here we just want to go into, a few more juicy bits. Famous historical master numbers.
All right, so yeah, we have Einstein, who's born on 314, Pi Day, 1879. And I know that, some of these people might be somewhat controversial to many people because they'll say that Einstein, he stole his information from a patent office. They'll say that Edison, he took much of his work from Tesla. But really, when it comes to the influence behind that number, it's undeniable that Einstein is kind of known as the most intelligent man ever. Even if that's not true, there is that imprint of the influence that clearly played a role. And in terms of the concept of relativity, he's the one that really helped popularize it. Now, with Edison, yes, it's certainly true that Tesla played a huge role in really being the brains behind a lot of the operation. But Edison was the one who was really able to get the electric grid accessible and more widespread. So you needed someone with that charisma and that influence. So he's also born on the 11th, so he has that. He has a combination of master number energy. But you need someone with that charisma and the influence who's able to get things out into the world instead of just someone that's kind of working by themselves. And Tesla certainly was a bit more of an introverted person, and he wasn't necessarily the best at communicating and connecting with other people. Now we have the Wright brothers. Wilbur Wright, he was born on a 33 day, and they were really helped get out the first airplane, and that's certainly a very influential thing. And they helped develop flight in modern society. Now we have Woodrow Wilson. Now this is a very interesting one. He's born on the 28th as well, and he's a 33 life path. He helped create the founding of the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve basically prints our money. And we also see kind of an interesting thing with the 13 going on here, because obviously there's one Federal Reserve and there's 12 regional banks, so 1 and 12, 13. And the date that the 12 regional banks were actually founded was also a 33 day, so 11, 16, 19, 14. So you kind of see something interesting going on here with some of these people that behind the Federal Reserve, where they're intentionally trying to create influence around these banks. So something to note there for sure. Now you've got Magnus Carlsen, who is who's actually a 33 life path. And we've got a very interesting video here. He's one of the greatest chess players of all time.
I've got this little clip of Magnus here, 8 years old. I'm pretty sure the greatest chess prodigy of all time. He's playing against a world champion here, and he's just kind of messing around, not really paying too much attention.
And to go on to 22, now this is Master Builder, Master Destroyer. And this is definitely a very interesting energy. If anyone that's going through a 22 cycle, it can certainly be very intense. But we've got George Washington, who's actually nicknamed the Town Destroyer by the Native Americans. And he was also obviously helped build America. Now you've got Vladimir Lenin. Now he helped build up the Soviet Union. He also destroyed the previous system in place. He played a role within the October Revolution. And yeah, now on to the 11 life paths. You've got Obama, Reagan, Clinton, Robert Downey Jr., Tony Robbins, Grant Cardone. You have quite a bit of people that are just known for being really great speakers, very charismatic people. And they end up kind of just a lot of these motivational speakers, especially, right? Tony Robbins, Grant Cardone, some of these top motivational speakers, these personal development types. There's something about 11 energy where we can be really good at being cheerleaders to other people and just helping motivate them to just do better,
Yeah, so just to wrap up here and maybe give a summary and perhaps an anecdote or two. Uh, the kind of intended purpose of this pilot video is just to whet your appetite for something in the realm of the esoteric um, that seems to be being brought to the forefront lately here. And, numerology is not the only thing we want to focus on, but it's kind of like, it's something that you can pretty easily go out and verify for yourself. Once you get the sort of the legend to the map that we have provided here, the meaning, the association with the various numbers, you can just go out there and pick up on these patterns yourself. Or if you're a student of history, you can go and look back and see where these patterns exist in history, whether that's deliberately engineered or something else perhaps. That's something that you can go and take a look at yourself. And something that you'll start noticing is you'll take a look at take a look back at your own life and perhaps see events that fall on certain days, maybe perhaps within certain personal years. Something happened, and you go back and you see that the numerology sort of just lines up with what happened. You know, I know that there's a personal story, right? I'd like to share here. Maybe I'd leave out names and stuff like that, but it was something that happened in a 22 personal year and on a 22 day as well. And I was having quite a rowdy night with some friends and had a little too much to drink. And I thought it'd be a good idea to just get a running start and just plow my way through a big glass door. Not sure why I thought that was a great idea, but it destroyed quite a bit more in my life than just the window, I would say. The window is kind of like a metaphor for the relationships that suffered as a result and other various things that I won't really get into, but it really that was something. Looking back, I could see how there was a lot of master destroyer energy on that day. And you'll go back into your life and you might notice these things as well. I don't know if you have any anecdotes to.
Yeah, so I mean, I've definitely noticed a lot of this stuff, and in terms of Gabe's story, I was actually there, so it was really wild looking at like the text messages and seeing that it was exactly on a 22 day. Because I remember I was like, "Huh, hey, he was in a 22 cycle. Did anything happen then?" And then I was like, "Oh, oh crap, that was crazy." So it is really wild, like piecing things together. For instance, on a 7 day, you're actually more likely to get into an accident or be injured. And I definitely had an accident on a 7 days and things of that sort. And you see certain things on 7 cycles. For instance, on a 19 day, you're more likely to get sick. And I've definitely had something like that happen. And once you start noticing these patterns, right? Like I totally understand that people are going to be skeptical to this type of stuff because uh, it is very, absurd when you initially look at it. What do you mean there's like these numbers that play a role in influencing us or whatever? But when you start noticing this stuff, it becomes really wild. And some of these synchronicities also, like it feels like there's a really strong, meaningful thing going on there, but then nothing happens out of it, and that can feel a bit discouraging at times. So it's like, sometimes it doesn't even it feels like there's like a ordered thing going on there, but then it consistently happens and then nothing comes out of it. And one thing for me personally is I mentioned the number 14. I just kept seeing that come up constantly, and I would just be like, "Oh, I wonder when this person was born," and they're born on the 14th. And I was, same thing with Tim Tebow right now. Actually, that happened right now when I was looking at that. I didn't even know he was born on the 14th. So I just kept seeing 14 pop up constantly, and that's within numerology. That's actually considered my lucky number, right? And you can figure out your lucky number. Yeah, you can figure out your number with numerology, and once you figure that out, you'll start seeing certain people where you have like friends born on maybe that day, or you'll see it pop up. And Gabe also has an interesting one with his lucky number.
Right. I mean, the lucky number, mine is 57. Um, right. I guess we'll get into another video how you calculate that. But
Right. Yeah.
growing up, I had a favorite sauce. It was 5-7 sauce, and it was just a silly kind of part of my childhood. But it's a you know a consistent memory. I mean, it was, I don't even know why I liked it so much, to be honest. That's kind of the thing about it that's so peculiar, is that there's this feeling about why did I even like the sauce? It sounds very mundane, but with once you get enough of these so-called coincidences, you start looking at those kind of things a little bit differently. So going forward, we want to get into a lot more than just numerology. I think it'll be a centerpiece of things going forward because it is something that's so verifiable, right? At least
Right.
statistically, you can really go out there and look into history and look into your own life. It's something that you'll start seeing everywhere. Once you kind of learn the meaning behind the numbers, you'll probably start chugging away in some numerology calculator, hopefully the one that we recommended here. And over time, you'll probably start doing it yourself in your head, and you're going to start seeing these patterns if you're paying attention. But of course, we want to go into a lot more, spiritual, esoteric. We want to cover more stuff that we've mentioned here in depth, particular dates or ideas, and yeah.
Yes, I mean, there's quite a bit of things. I mean, numerology, for instance, that isn't really talked about within the mainstream, and quite a bit of mainstream academia would just kind of scoff at this type of stuff and say it's unscientific. There's nothing to it, and but then there's all these people, obviously, that are part of the elites that are clearly using it, and they probably like the fact that quite a bit of these rationalists are dismissing it because it just means they're able to use it even more. And that really does touch upon the whole concept of the esoteric and versus the mainstream, because there is quite a conflict that's going on there, even though there's a lot of people using it. And once you start noticing these patterns, and there's quite a bit of patterns to recognize when it comes to more than just numerology, right? And even with astrology, there's a lot of the basic astrology that people hear growing up. They mostly just hear about their sun sign, or they don't really even look at much into the Western or the Chinese zodiac aspect of things, and some of the things with primes and things of that sort. So there's a lot of ground to cover when it comes to that as well, to certain topics that people aren't really familiar with.
Yeah, and I think that people should, like you said, pay attention to the elites. I mean, if all of this is just woo woo, it's numbers have meaning. What is that? All the occult stuff, the symbolism that we're going to get into. Uh, then why are the most powerful people on this planet paying attention to it? Why are they going through the effort to even, uh, you know, orchestrate an event to happen on this very specific day? Why is that even part of the calculation for the elites? That's something we'll certainly go into, but that should also be a motivating factor for why your interest should be piqued in the first place. So that's
Cool. And, another thing that I also really want to add, especially to a lot of the Christians, is one thing that I really cherish is how during the medieval ages, quite a bit of Catholic monks actually held on to and preserved the pagan literature. And their reasoning behind it is because they saw a lot of beauty and truth within that. Even if they were written by people that weren't believers, they were pursuing the truth. And if you are someone that wants to pursue the truth, then it shouldn't really matter who some of the initial people that talked about it are. And you can really learn to reconcile a lot of this stuff with different beliefs and faiths.
yeah. So I guess till next time. No, signing out.
All right. All right, so this is just something that I want to do, just a disclaimer for GG33 and just about Gary in general. I understand that he's not everyone's cup of tea, right? There's going to be people that look into him and then be like, wow, I don't like the way he says this. I wish he said something different. The thing is, Gary just does things the way that he wants to do it, and he's going to be abrasive to many people. And at the end of the day, I appreciate a lot of the wisdom and information that he's put out, right? I don't agree with everything he says, and you might not either, but ultimately for me, it just comes down to whether they are speaking the truth or not. And so I really appreciate a lot of the knowledge that he's put out, even if I don't agree with everything. And that's the ultimate disclaimer that I want to give, right? Not everyone in G33 agrees with everything that Gary says. It's not a matter of being like a cult or something. I've heard people like try and like use that type of pejorative against the organization and things like that, right? And so just my main disclaimer really comes down to how you might not like his personality, but at the end of the day, he does have a lot of wisdom on his side.
Yeah, and I think this should be our disclaimer across the board. I mean, we're going to be getting information from a lot of different sources, a lot of different kinds of people, and what we care about is whether it's, verifiable, actionable, if it's something that's legit. We're not really going to pay attention to how it's presented or the entire life history of the person that's presenting it. We're interested in information and wisdom. So that's kind of our whole disclaimer going forward, really.